Good morning. This is John Richardson speaking with you from Toronto, Canada. Today is Monday. It's Monday morning, December the 8th, 2025. And oh my God, Decembers are usually down times, I think, in the world of citizenship, tax, and life in general, but not this year. Things are heating up rapidly with all kinds of moving parts. And joining me I'm going to use the word continue because I predict we're going to be back soon and consistently this discussion about today's citizenship. And we're going to use the Moreno bill again to launch our discussion, but welcoming again Virginia Torre Jeker in Dubai. Virginia, how are you today?
Hi, John. I'm very well, and thank you for having me and continuing this amazing discussion.
Well, I think continuing is the operative word. We are just beginning. And, this is very opportune because you have just published another article on Forbes, which I think is a continuation of the Marino bill. And, I thought it was a great article. And I think really to summarize the article, today, I think last time we talked about what the Marino bill said, which isn't that complicated. But the complication is not what these things say; it's what they mean, right? And the effect that they have on the lives of people they impact, lawyers and legislators and everybody else. And I think that today's article is the beginning of a discussion into what I would call were the Moreno bill to be enacted, and I doubt that it would, but were it to be enacted, what would some of the effects of it be? Is that a fair statement?
Oh, I think that's quite a fair statement, John. And as we are seeing together, the effects were far more than I think we initially were anticipating.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that all kinds of people listen to this podcast would say, wow, they didn't talk about my situation, etc. And I would invite you to get in touch with us because we'd love to talk about your situation. But all right, so to backtrack, in case anybody is unaware of the Moreno bill, I'll give you the 30-second Reader's Digest view in the extreme. Basically, this is a bill from Senator Moreno in Ohio that says, dual citizenship is bad. Dual citizenship means divided loyalties. As Americans, we cannot have divided loyalties. Therefore, we must get rid of dual citizenship. And the only way to get rid of dual citizenship is to get rid of dual citizens. And we do that by forcing dual citizens to choose U.S. citizenship or their foreign citizenship. And if they don't make a decision, we'll make it for them. They're deemed to have relinquished their U.S. citizenship. Is that more or less what the bill says, Virginia?
Absolutely, that's correct. They get a 1-year grace period to give up either the U.S. or the foreign citizenship. And if they don't take action within that 1-year time frame from the date of enactment of the bill, they will be deemed to have voluntarily relinquished their U.S. citizenship. And those are very important words there.
Well, they are very important words, both from an immigration perspective and from a tax perspective.
Yes.
And, to get you warmed up here, because, I consider you, as you know, the world's favorite tax lawyer, the world's favorite international tax lawyer. In simple terms, what would be the implications of that relinquishing U.S. citizenship from a tax perspective before we get into the more fun stuff?
Right. Okay. So, from a tax perspective, if you're deemed to have given up your U.S. citizenship, one must look and ask, is this person a so-called covered expatriate for purposes of the Internal Revenue Code? And we have spoken numerous times about the exit tax and the transfer tax imposed on, recipients who are U.S. people of gifts or bequests from covered expatriates. So our first inquiry would be, gee, is this person a covered expat? And we look to their net worth. If they have $2 million or more of net worth, they're automatically treated as current covered expats. If they have a certain average annual income tax liability, so we look at the tax they've paid over the past 5 years. If that exceeds a certain threshold, then they can be treated as covered expats. Or finally, and this is the one that I'm mostly concerned with for people, is even if they don't meet either of those dollar thresholds we spoke of, if they have not been fully tax compliant in the 5-year period prior to the expatriation or the deemed expatriation, then they can also be a covered expat. And you and I, John, have looked at numerous expatriation cases, and we always ask, to see let's say, the past 5 years of tax returns to make sure that they have been fully correct. Maybe you send them on to your CPA colleagues and so forth for examination and what needs to be fixed. There's always something. I've never seen a case where there wasn't some kind of tax noncompliance, mostly because we have very onerous reporting rules whenever there are foreign assets involved. So chances are very strong that someone will be a covered expatriate under this bill if they're deemed to give up their U.S. citizenship, unless they are fully aware of all the rules. They know that, gee, I have a year to do something. Let me get everything examined because it sounds like I'm going to, maybe fall into this trap. And that's our big concern, is whether the person will be a covered expat. If they are, they're treated as if they have sold all of their assets anywhere in the world, and they have to pay what's called an exit tax on that pretend gain, even though they don't have any gain, they haven't really sold anything. So, yes, that's a big financial problem. In addition, any U.S. recipients of a gift or an inheritance from that covered expatriate has to pay the price and be punished because of the covered expatriate giving up citizenship. And that punishment is a transfer tax imposed at the rate of 40% on the fair market value of the gift or the inheritance that they receive from the covered expatriate. Now, that transfer tax, again, only applies to U.S. recipients. So if there are none, at least we don't have to worry about that angle. But yes, that's a big angle here. I don't know if the congressional staff looked at this issue, considered this issue, was even aware of this issue. So yes, that's the tax angle.
So this is interesting because listening to you describe that, we had a podcast, I think in late spring or early summer, about the problem of the denaturalization, right? And that also triggering the exit tax. So we see a theme here, right? Of, the United States stripping people of status. Okay, stripping people of citizenship status and essentially opening them up to their assets being confiscated on the way out via this exit tax thing, right?
That's right.
I
That's
mean,
right.
really extraordinary, really extraordinary. I mean, if kicking them out isn't bad enough, right? Whoa, you think you're gonna be kicked out and take your assets with you? Not so fast. So
And
that's
let's remember, Joan, I've blogged before, and I believe we've spoken before on, how difficult is it for the IRS to get someone's assets when they are overseas? What mechanisms does the IRS have to collect penalties and tax amounts? So I do have blog posts on that, but the point I am very concerned with here is that these people who are treated as having given up their citizenship voluntarily, even though they may know nothing about this rule, most likely they're dual nationals. Most likely they will have U.S. assets, and those will be very easy for the IRS to attach. So I think this is going to have, real world issues if this becomes a law as it
well,
stands.
well, it certainly is, and it's an issue also for Americans abroad. But those people may be able to benefit or have a greater likelihood of being able to benefit from the dual citizenship from birth exemption, right?
Yes,
So,
probably.
it's interesting because, not only do we have we need to cleanse the country of dual citizens, right? but there are different kinds of dual citizens, right? And this is very, very
That's right.
interesting. And I think that
I
makes,
think it's a good idea to quickly look at some of that.
yeah.
So, for example, when someone naturalizes and becomes a U.S. citizen, they may keep their other citizenship. We have children born abroad to one American parent and one foreign parent. And depending on how long that American parent has lived in the States, and it's a very short time frame requirement of 5 years, that child born overseas automatically has U.S. citizenship from birth, even though the other parent is foreign. So we can have this happening quite often. We have many times seen situations where someone is an accidental American. They're born in the U.S. by happenstance, perhaps because their foreign parents were studying there or working there, and they are citizens from birth. So we can have all kinds of people being dual citizens. And
Would you
yeah, it's
say,
scary.
Virginia, would you say that if let's say, you just heard a conversation at the next table while you were having lunch, and what you overheard was, oh my God. I mean, not only is this a stupid law, but it treats some dual citizens more harshly than others. Would you agree?
Yes, it certainly does, because I think you're alluding to someone may have the dual national exception from birth available to them to escape the expatriation covered expat tax regime. Is that where
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
going?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, this is, I think, absolutely incredible stuff. Now, just one other tax related aspect before we talk about different, we extend our discussion different kinds of dual citizens. I noticed in your article that you had a bit of discussion of Social Security.
Yes.
What were your
That's a
thoughts on that?
right. That's very intense. So Social Security, if you are not a US person, you're a foreigner, you can be taxed on your Social Security amounts. If you're living abroad, for example, you must pay typically a 30% withholding tax. Before you get your money, the SSA will withhold 30% and pay it over to the IRS on 85% of your benefits. So that comes out to an effective tax rate of 25%. So foreigners who are living abroad get hit with a higher tax usually than the person that's living in the States and receiving Social Security.
Yeah, Virginia,
That's,
could I just
yeah,
pause you there? Because you're saying something that is incredibly important. And I think the significance of that is lost on people in the expatriation process. The
it is.
fact
It
that
definitely is.
non-resident aliens are subject to a higher tax on Social Security means continue.
Means they're getting a big chunk out of their Social Security benefit
And for
every month.
people who are living primarily on Social Security, would you think long and hard before renouncing U.S. citizenship for that reason?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. But it's not just renouncing, John, just as an aside. It's also giving up your green
yeah,
card.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
And some
we
people
discussed this.
are essentially forced to give up their green card. Maybe, they were working in the States, they had real ties, now they don't, they've lost their job or whatever the situation is. Some people really cannot maintain their US residency as required by the immigration laws. So those people as well will be hit with this higher tax.
Yeah, yeah.
But let's move on, because Social Security issues get worse when someone is treated as giving up their US citizenship, or, does give up their US citizenship voluntarily. The Social Security Administration has country lists based on citizenship. And if you are a recipient of Social Security benefits and you are not a citizen of one of those countries listed on the SSA lists, then you will not be entitled to get your Social Security abroad for longer than a 6-month time period. After 6 months, your benefits will stop and you will have to return to America and stay there lawfully for an entire calendar month. And then your benefits will resume to be paid outside of the States. This is not at all well known, and it's very, very scary. And if you look at the IRS, not the IRS, the Social Security Administration website, it's so unclear. I mean, I struggled with this. And, I've been doing stuff for a long time in the tax world. And I struggled with, gee, what does this mean? And who's on this list and what list does this? Yes. So it gets extremely complicated. And I think, you know, disabled Americans, the elderly, if they are going to be zapped by this proposed bill about dual citizenship, then it's going to be a very, very difficult life for them if they're not on one of these country lists.
Well, Virginia, I mean, this is absolutely correct, but can we just say that it effectively strips people of Social Security benefits or a certain group of people?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I mean that's what this stuff actually means, right? In terms of people's lives. Now, you know, you also what I found very, very, it's very interesting, but so obvious. I mean, sometimes the most obvious things are invisible to people, right? You
That's
know,
correct. That's correct. Absolutely.
is the reality, right, of what we in Canada would call First Nations people,
Mhm.
Indians, whatever, right, and U.S. citizenship, and you included a very interesting discussion of that in your article, and maybe you can summarize that.
Oh, John, I'm getting lost here in my article. I'm sorry. What did you want me to
Well, the
summarize?
1924 legislation
Ah,
gave Indians U.S. citizenship.
okay. So I think we should let people know that this article on Forbes that I published today grew out of an email from a Native American who was very concerned after he read my first article in Forbes. And literally, he gave me, 5-word question. How would this affect us? So he doesn't know how this would affect Native Americans. And I really started to dig in because, I love to dig in. And I had to understand a little bit more about the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, which formalized U.S. citizenship for Native Americans, granting them birthright citizenship for all of them that were born within the U.S. territory. So that was in 1924. And then we had later cases, this issue of, okay, these Native Americans do have sovereignty in the tribe. It's considered to be like a sovereign nation. So does that mean that the Native American has a dual citizenship? What's going to happen to him under this Moreno proposed law? And I researched that. My view is that based on U.S. Supreme Court precedent from 1831, mind you, the American, the Native American is treated very, very specially. And they are, while they are considered the recognized tribes are considered to be what's called domestic dependent nations, and they're not viewed as foreign nations. This was directly addressed in the Supreme Court in the Cherokee Nation case in 1831. So I view it as Native American tribes, they are considered sovereign nations in many key respects, but their sovereignty exists within the framework of their relationship with the United States of America. So I don't believe that this unique political status of tribal citizenship is the kind of foreign allegiance that the Exclusive Citizenship Act is aiming toward. That's my take on it. But I can certainly understand why Native Americans might be very concerned and have a lot of unease with this because there has been a lot of sad history going on there. And citizenship policy is very complicated with Native American communities. They've had, issues of forced assimilation. They've had issues with voting rights in different states. They've lost ancestral lands. I think recent events with ICE have highlighted all of these sensitivities. And the Native American community does seem to have a very strong apprehension now, because I've looked at a few of their websites, and one of them has posted FAQs for Native Americans to understand that they are American citizens and they can't just be deported. So there's obviously a lot of fear happening. And yes, this email from the Native American reader was very moving to me, and that was why I dove in so intensely. So let's see, I think that a thoroughly researched bill would have addressed in some way some of these issues that my discussion in Forbes has brought out. The Social Security, the exit tax regime under the code, the concerns of the Native American community, and I'm sure there's others out there that I haven't thought of, but we also have diplomatic concerns. I mean, many countries will not let a birthright citizen of that country renounce citizenship. So now what is that person supposed to do? For example, the country of, Argentina.
Right. Interesting question. I guess what they're supposed to do is renounce U.S. citizenship. That's your problem, buddy.
Right. I hear you. And then, gee, what's going to happen with their Social Security benefits, and what's going to happen with their U.S. tax situation under the expatriation rules? It's very scary.
Well,
I don't know how the
this
bill would
bill,
address such scenarios
yeah, this
without
bill is
like straining
fine.
diplomatic relations. It's not going to be an easy thing. And I just don't know. Of course, we'll never know, were any of these issues considered before this bill was put out there.
There's not a chance in the world. The bill is just an expression of, the sort of narrow-mindedness of one particular individual.
Well, I would like, John, to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay?
Okay.
I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt. You know how I am in that regard. I try not to judge, to make assumptions and so forth. But I
Virginia,
think
is there
moving
any
forward, this has
possibility?
to be,
Is there any possibility that these issues were considered? Yes or no?
I don't think it's a great
Well, isn't
possibility
that all
at
we
all,
need here?
at all.
Yeah, I think that's all we need. I mean, this is,
I mean,
it's
John, we even have U.S.
political
Supreme
malpractice.
Court rulings on citizenship that someone cannot be deemed to have given up their citizenship. It has to be a voluntary act, and it has to be intentionally done with the idea that they know and want to give up their U.S. citizenship. We have landmark U.S. cases on this. Were these even considered? And if they were, this flies right in the face of the Supreme Court.
Virginia, Black's decision in a 4M was a 5-4 decision. It was a 5-4 decision. I agree with you, absolutely. But the problem is that a 4M reversed Perez Brownwell, which is a 10 years
Mm-hmm.
earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Although I fully agree with you on what the law is on this, I think that there's always a danger, that the law could be changed as well.
Of course, John. Of course. Look at Roe v. Wade. I
Yeah,
mean, yes, I'm with you.
no question. But
I'm
this is,
with you. So
we are living
these,
at such interesting times. And, this is a moment where I think it's actually a value to be a lawyer. I mean, it gives you an enhanced understanding of, all the tentacles of this, right?
that's correct. And I'm sure there are tentacles out there that I have not considered. So
Well, that's
if
why
any
we'll
of
continue more podcasts,
if
obviously.
any of your listeners would like to explain other tentacles, that would be wonderful. I have reached out to some Native American communities to let them become aware of my article, because I think people do need to be aware of these issues. And look, we're already seeing significant pushback in Senator Moreno's home state of Ohio. So
Yes.
yeah, maybe there's going to be more pushback as this becomes more and more publicized.
Well, I think that there's two kinds of people here. Those who don't understand citizenship and don't really understand the issue, and therefore may or may not support the Moreno bill. And the other ones who
Hmm.
are dual citizens or have some understanding of citizenship and will certainly oppose it. What I've not seen there is anybody with dual citizenship or an understanding of citizenship generally that supports the Moreno bill. So
Yes, correct.
we'll have to see. It is, I mean, it's political malpractice in the extreme. I think that's the kindest thing you can say about it. You'll take that one.
I won't say, John. I prefer to have a little bit of a neutral stand being a Swiss.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm neutral too. It's just that this is so blatantly crazy.
It's yes, it's difficult. I mean, I get the positive side of what we're talking about, loyalty to America. I get that. But there is, to my mind, no consideration that America was built by immigrants, and many people retain their former, country's citizenship where they were living, and they value their heritage. And I think it's wrong to try and force people to give up their heritage. Just that doesn't
Well,
sit right with me.
Justice Black in the Ephorium case would agree with you, and certainly former Chief Justice Warren, who wrote the dissent in Paris versus Brownwell that became the majority decision, Ephorium would agree. I mean, what this is going to do, I think, is force I wouldn't even say a rethinking, I think a thinking, a consideration of what citizenship actually is or means, right? And
Yes.
I think that's important because I think the problem with this is, or the reality of it is, that unless you've lived outside the United States, possibly as not a citizen of the country you're living in, right? I think things like this get you to understand the importance of citizenship and perhaps, what it actually means. And the trouble is that if you have always lived in a country, citizenship is more of an assumption of your life without any sense of what it means. You've never lived without it, so you don't know what it means to not have it, et cetera, et cetera. But we certainly will be continuing this. And of course, we also now have the birthright citizenship issue coming up. And before we sign off today, Virginia, what are your initial thoughts on the birthright citizenship issue? I know that they will evolve as this evolves, but what's your reaction to this?
Oh, I don't know, John. I think I'd like to leave that for another day, to be honest.
Well, we will have another day for that, no question. All right,
We
great
will have another day. We will have another day. People can
days,
find
days.
the article on Forbes if they just Google my name, Virginia Torre Jeker, and put Forbes, it'll pop up. You can follow me on Forbes. In several days' time, it will appear on my US tax blog, and you can find the blog. It has so many interesting categories. You can learn about expatriation, for example. You can learn about Social Security as another example. And they can find that at www.us-tax.org. And yes,
Well,
follow me
it's
there as
really
well. You'll
about
get
life because
posts.
taxation is life, really. I mean, all you need if you want to learn about a country or a society, just look at the tax rules. Well,
Good point.
okay, Virginia, this has been
Thank you,
great.
John.
Oh, and by the way, if anybody's listening to this, feel free to reach out to either one of us. If you're experiencing an angle of this about citizenship or you exit taxes or whatever, because I predict that this is going to be an ongoing discussion that we're going to be having here because, all kinds of interesting things keep popping up. So,
Yes, yes,
hey,
yes, very
hey,
much so.
Virginia.
I would like to know how Senator Moreno's bill is going to move forward, what might be happening with that. I look forward to future developments.
Well, I think it's going to be a hard job. I think it's going to be Very difficult to get that through, but anyway. All right, Virginia. Thank you.
All right, John. Thank
Look
you.
forward to the next
Have a
one.
great day.